Man, what a week. That was that last episode was like really interesting. And it definitely like I knew that God was gonna do his thing. And it was gonna be good. Out of like I guess my own ignorance, I didn't think that like it was gonna do as good so fast. And I think that there was a lot that was said on that podcast, or on that episode that um it almost it talked about I think a different part of the walk. And I think that um us talking about you're not the same, and like how um we're taken from the world. We're not of the world, but we're in the world, right? um there's so many different transitions to that. There's different ways to look at that. And I think that the part that we talked about last week was an important topic to talk about. But I think one of the things that we can give the viewers is something like the initial walk and what that looks like. Um, I think that this is a very like for me, I'm pretty passionate about this series. And as I was in prayer tonight, and I was sitting in here and I was asking God for clarity on our next episode. We really weren't even going to do um, an episode 2. We were going to go a completely different route.
Yeah.
And I think
That did not work out.
yeah, but I'm just so glad that we decided to pause and pray.
Yeah.
Because like I believe like tonight's episode is going to be a really good one. And I'm really stoked, based off like the small conversation we had about it.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah. So I think, looking at some of the notes that I wrote, because like God had just given me a download when I was sitting in a prayer. I was like asking him what direction to go with my ministry and then our ministry. And he had given me some things, and then he had given me that huge download when it came to "You're Not the Same" episode 2. And I was immediately reminded that, before we can talk about um, how we are not of the world, but we are in the world, and where that realization comes into play, right? There's a step before that, and that's like the initial following.
Yeah.
What does that look like? Like what are the first steps? Like, I mean, what does that look like? And I know for us, it was a very clear, like, you are going this way or
So
else.
this is it.
Yes. Um, I know we're like kind of making light of it, but it was like a very serious situation.
Yeah.
And now that I'm on this side of the fence and that we're on this side, I don't understand how I could have ever wanted to be in the world. I think it was I don't even know how to explain it. It's just being on this side. It just feels so clean, and I feel so clear, and I feel so much more understood. Um, but talking about the first steps, you know, um, that transition was like wild.
Yeah, it was.
Um, and I think like too, a lot of people they don't understand like there's a difference between walking and going for a walk. I think like a lot of people, because like we've talked about like life and death and the power of the tongue, and basically like what you claim is what you'll have, good, bad, or indifferent. But um, I didn't realize that until I got onto this walk, right? And I started walking, and like we're currently walking. Um, but there's a big difference between going for a walk and walking. Going for a walk implies that you're coming back home, but like walking means that you don't know when you're coming home, but you're walking. You're just going, and I think the posture on that determines how long you're going to stay in the Word, stay with God, or backslide.
Yeah.
I think that's the reason why I've had so many walks. There's so many times that I was like, yeah, I'm a Christian. I'm this or I'm that, or and then inevitably I didn't take it seriously. But I think like we were the way that we lived our lives prior to this walk forced us into walking.
Yeah, I did. Like, we had no choice after that. That was like,
That was
this
it.
is it. Like, you have no choice.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like going through that, like, what emotions did you have when we? Because like there was a night in the hotel, and that was like it was a decision where I audibly said it, but our hearts both knew that there is no other choice
Right.
because of what we literally just experienced. But like, what emotions were like going on for you?
Um, I was very scared.
Mhm.
Uh, I definitely had like a lot of fear in that moment. A lot of resentment. Uh, yeah, that was it. It was so many different emotions. I can't even name all of them. Like, it was so much at one time.
Overwhelming.
Yeah, it was very overwhelming.
Yeah, I mean, just like sitting here, just like
Reflecting.
reflecting is emotional.
Yeah.
I can like just feel it in my heart, like
Mm-hmm.
how deep we were into the world, but how close we were to finding a new life. Um, like in that moment, we were so estranged, but it was like we were disciplined by our own actions, so much so that we had felt almost as if we had disappointed God, and the disappointment was never realized before that because we were so comfortable living the way that we were, and then in that moment we were sitting there and we're like, how did we even get here?
Yeah, I didn't even realize how far gone I was until that happened.
Yeah, and it's so, oh man, it's such a comfortably dangerous place to be in where we were at. And so much of the world, including Christians, people that are, self-proclaimed, like following God, things like that, they're still so deep or comfortable in their bed of sin, but they don't even understand where they're at. Yeah. But I think in that moment, like the emotions from that disappointment fueled the fire for us to really like call, like it was a call to action. Like there was like no ifs, ands, or buts about it. There was a job that had to be done, and there was no end in sight. It just was like go, and we didn't know like necessarily like where we were going. Like all we knew was we needed God, and we were just like running, but we didn't know which direction to go. And I think that's where like the nervousness, the anxiety, the um, being scared came from. It's like we know what we wanted, but we didn't know how to get it. Yeah. But we knew it had to be fast. Yeah. And I think in that moment, like the only thing that we could do was just pray and just start reading. Like I remember when we first started, we didn't know what we were doing at all. But it was those first steps that were most critical. And I think because of the nature of our of the initial part of our walk, the togetherness was most important. Doing the Bible together, doing the prayer together. There was like, oh my goodness, like those initial like months from when we started that walk were crazy. Yeah, it was. Like spiritually, like it was so crazy. And it was like, what is happening in our life? Like, what was actually going on? It was just like we had just been shell shocked, like we had just got blown up and we're like concussed, and you just hear the ring, and you don't know what's going on, but you know that there's danger close, but you have to run.
Yeah.
It was like you couldn't look back. You had to just run
Mm-hmm.
to the direction of safety, and that was God for us, right? Um, so I believe like in those initial months, that was the I would say the most spiritual bombs went off.
Mm-hmm.
There was so much healing that had to happen,
Yeah.
but like we couldn't stop and fall in that self pity of the healing, because of the way that we were walking. We had to pick our stuff up and grow at the same time. Like we had to let go and grow at the same time. There was like so much like personal growth that had to happen both individually. Like you had a lot of growth,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a lot of growth,
Yeah.
that had to happen. And while we were doing it separate, we were doing it together.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was super important, in the beginning of our walk. I think that's like if we could describe the walk, that was the initial part. Is it was just like we were living separate but together.
Mm-hmm.
We're living separate lives, separate minds, and I think that's so, man. This is exactly like why God says like we are supposed to be equally yoked. We can't be walking in different directions. And I'm going to touch on this. I know it's like kind of going off on a tangent, but I think it's super important for people to capture. Is like a lot of people, including myself, when I first heard like being equally yoked, I was like the yellow part has to be the same size or what? like, like I didn't understand. I was like, are we doing scrambled or like sunny side up? What is it? No. And I didn't realize like what a yoke really was.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that a yoke is the collar that goes around cattle
Mm-hmm.
in order to pull like a wagon or something straight. And when God is like telling us to be equally yoked, he's saying both, like he'll say like basically on the cows, there's like, they got the 4 feet, they've got inside legs and they've got outside legs, right? Your inside leg has to move when my outside leg moves, because it's a balance, right? Because my outside leg pulls right and your inside leg also pulls right. But my inside leg pulls left and your outside leg pulls left. So if we step left and right at the same time, we're going separate directions and we can't go anywhere. We'll literally just go in circles.
Right.
So that's why it's so important to be equally yoked, right? And I think a lot of people, they don't understand that being equally yoked isn't something that just happens when you get married. It's something that happens in spite of marriage. Like in spite of a biblical, godly marriage, is like um, you have to learn to become equally yoked. It doesn't just happen.
Right.
There's a lot of hurdles that have to happen in order for you to understand. Like, all right, whether we say left, right, left, right, like whatever it takes to get in that same rhythm, so that way we're pulling with the same legs, right? Because it's kind of funny, but like your inside leg is literally the same side of the cow as my outside leg. It's just about the position that you're in.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's like,
I think that's good.
yeah, it's
That
kind of
was
cool
a good like example. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I think like, man, it can go like so many different directions, but just to, like bring it back in, like the initial part of the walk, I think is very crucial to laying out the rest of your walk. How serious and how deep you take that initial part. Um, it could either be like a surface burn or like a deep flesh wound,
Mm-hmm.
and like a surface burn is like it's not gonna stick, but like that deep flesh wound is gonna leave a scar that you remember,
Yeah.
and not necessarily like a bad one. But even though like the nature of the reason why we decided to go on our walk was like really scary and bad, um, it's a good reminder of a bad time. And it put us in, I think, a position to where there's a drive and there's a reason, because I remember what it was like to have the absence of God in my life in that moment when all I wanted was God, like experiencing the judgment without even experiencing seeing our Creator. Um, like in the events that led up to like us deciding like we got a second chance and it's like it's go time. Um, when when you think about like our walk, like what's one of the things that you think about the most?
You saying like the initial like walk?
I mean, you could tap initial walk, or you could tap just something like that you've been taught. I mean, maybe stick with initial, and then like you can delve into like something you taught, like just overall.
Most. Initially the spiritual warfare, and then
Yes.
the consistency that we held within it. Because, like you said, it was all new to us together. It was really tough, but we stayed consistent in the little that we did, as far as we had the conversation, which I think is necessary. Like, if you're married and you're doing, like, you have
I
to
think you
have
should
a
dive into the conversation after this.
serious conversation. And then prayer. We never prayed together, I don't think.
It was
Besides
scary.
like meals and stuff like that. But the prayer, and then also every night we would read together.
Yeah.
Every night.
I kind of miss having that time. I know we don't get it much now, but I think like God definitely allowed for that time in that moment. Because I think we were still on leave when all that spiritual warfare was going on. I mean, it bled into like being back in
Back to work.
back to work. But I think the initial steps where we experienced like the craziest spiritual warfare in the beginning, we were still on leave. And then the prayer time together, we were still on leave, I think. And then when work kind of kicked off, it didn't necessarily go away completely. It went away a little bit more, but
I don't think. I mean, it was a while ago, but I think we were very consistent, because now when I go back into like my alone time, or like I'm reading and different, or just reflecting, we were like starting to be on fire for God.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think about a lot, and I'm like questioning, like, am I still like that? Like, obviously we are more mature now, so there's a lot more that comes into play. Because we were just doing like the little 2 or 3 scriptures.
Yeah.
But
Falling asleep.
falling asleep, half asleep. So yeah, I feel like we were just constantly on fire. And I remember, a friend told us, like, don't lose that fire that you have.
Yeah, Craig.
Yeah. Hey, Craig.
Craig Leg. Yeah, I think that's super important. Like, feeding the fire, we were just adding fuel to it. The more that we would dive in, we didn't know what we were reading, we didn't understand it, but we just knew like, regardless, we had to be consumed. And I think the consumption of the word inevitably like led us to asking more questions, which those questions led to knowledge, and the knowledge led to wisdom. And then we naturally fell into a group of people, like an awesome group of people when we were in Germany.
I was just gonna say,
oh man, I miss them so much.
The crazy thing too is, I think like maybe 2 months after us like doing that, we decided like, hey, let's find a church. But I remember
I already know where this is going.
like maybe 6 months or maybe a year prior to all of this taking place. I remember like, we should go here.
Yeah,
And
I
I was
didn't
like,
want to go.
I don't know, like,
I wasn't on board.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I probably like posed it in a way like, oh, I'm not opposed to it, but I really wasn't trying to go because I was so deep in the world.
Yeah.
I knew you were gonna say that.
Really?
Yeah, I knew you were gonna bring that up because I was gonna bring it up if you didn't.
And then, so what happened was we was like, I think someone from work had told you about a church, and we prepared to like go to that church, which was like 30 minutes away.
Oh yeah.
And then we noticed, like after getting dressed, that we were not gonna make it. And I like Googled, and that same church popped up again, and we went there and made some friends and a good group of people.
Yeah, I remember. I think one of the first people like I had a deep conversation there with was Laws, and
I remember that.
Because I didn't realize like she was like a not a pastor, but she used to speak at her church when she was maybe in the States, and I could just tell like this literally goes back to like when we were talking about subconscious ministry in the first one. I could tell subconsciously that she was a woman of God, and I was like, I know I can ask her a question and she's gonna be able to give me like she guided me very well. And I was actually like in my flesh because even though we were still new on our walk, we were still operating in our flesh because like we didn't know better yet. We were still learning how to separate flesh and soul. And so in my flesh, I was like, I I felt not necessarily ashamed, but like maybe like prideful because I was like I didn't think like a and this was the ignorance of my flesh. I didn't think like a woman could teach me something about God. Like I thought it was like a man should be teaching me this stuff, but really in that moment, God was like saying like I can use anybody I want. Like try me if you want to. I will use anybody in my kingdom. My people, they're chosen. They're predetermined. They have roles, responsibilities. But I use anybody. Um, but yeah, I thought it was interesting because we were meant together.
Yeah.
That literally like that group of people is really the reason that other than like the initial testimony of why we started the walk, but those people there were the reason why we made it this far. Other than like obviously God's guidance and stuff, but they made it easy to want to be a part of this.
Yeah, that's why it's good to have that community when you're starting your walk. Good community.
Community is definitely important. I agree. I think we were kind of mentioning when you were talking about I guess like the different emotions that came along with um, the initial walk. There was a couple things that you had hit on. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I had said that you should go deeper into it. I don't know if you remember.
The conversation.
Yes, yes, yeah. Go. So you said that the conversation that we had was important. Like elaborate.
So for married couples that are starting to walk together, I mean, it could be used in different situations.
Yeah, married couples though.
Just for us, we had a lot of. So how you said earlier, right? You were living one way, and then I was living like we were separately, but living together. So there was things that needed to be talked about to start off our walk.
To break stuff down.
Yeah, we had to like set boundaries and not and things in order to move forward.
We had to be honest.
Yeah.
About everything.
Yeah.
And that was scary.
It was scary. And there's still like stuff that we didn't like. There was a fine line where we were just like, okay. I know for me, it was just like.
And we should definitely talk about that too, because I know where you're going.
Yeah, like I was just like, I don't even want to like even go deeper.
It's not good right now.
That. So.
Yeah, I think that was wisdom for you because, like you said, there's like things that we chose, we elected, we set apart because we know that conversation's coming. Because we've talked about it, but we still haven't had it completely but it was wisdom to not, because it was definitely going to be an attack from the enemy in that very vulnerable point in our walk, where we were already weak, very very weak, and it was important for us to compartmentalize that part and that conversation because um, that would have just tore apart all the stuff that God had just put together.
And then, like, who knows? We would have been like strayed even farther. It's funny, probably a thing right now.
Hatred, just contentment for each other. You know, it would have been bad. But that was like you operating out of wisdom, because you knew better. And I was praying that we didn't have that conversation at that time because there was already so much damage that honestly I feel responsible for, that that it just I don't know how I could have faced you. But I'm just glad that God put us in this position that we're in now, where we can be mature about certain things. And I love that I can love you. Like, I don't understand like how I could have been so confused before. I love the love that we share, and I love the biblical hierarchy that we have in our marriage. Like, a lot of people maybe from the outside looking in think that I have everything. Like, I have it on lock just because like the way that we operate. But nobody knows that you are the person that brought me here. And I give you full credit. I know you always say like, don't, like, you shouldn't do that, whatever else. But no, like, really, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have known which direction to go. You, even when you couldn't trust me, you allowed me to lead in that moment. You literally cut that part of your flesh off, threw it down, refused to submit to it, and you trusted me. No, you didn't trust me. You trusted God that I would do the right thing. That was literally bare bones trust. And the thing about that, I don't want to cut you off, go ahead. It was so hard because my flesh just wanted to be like connect. Like, I couldn't say that. Like, God did not allow me to be like. He's like, no, you're gonna sit here and you're gonna process this. You're going to stay right here. Yeah. I just like, I think that's so it's such a beautiful thing. Because I don't know if I would have had that same discipline. So like God, He chose the right one, and I'm just so glad that I didn't ruin my blessing. Because literally from like the beginning of our relationship, it just is like, it's been interesting to say the least. But now, like, our relationship is just, I love it. You know, like, we have our little like quirks here and there, but that's every marriage. Like, it's not gonna be just smooth sail. It's gonna be something, especially if you're walking together. Oh yeah, I mean, the attack's definitely gonna come because like the enemy hates and despises marriage. That's why like you see so many people stepping out. You see so many people, doing the sex before marriage, things like that, because he literally, like, everything that God makes clean, the enemy wants to make unclean. But that's like a whole nother topic for a different day. And then two, like, I know we kind of brushed on this a little bit, as far as like what we expected it to be like, or like basically like what we thought our walk was going to be like, how like we were scared X, Y, and Z. But like, what did you think it was going to be like versus what it actually was? That's a hard question. I know we kind of like answered it a little bit. Like, we thought it was going to be scary. We didn't know what to expect.
So it was scary. Um, I don't know. Like, that's a really hard question to answer.
Yeah. I mean,
because I didn't necessarily, in the moments, I had whatever feeling or emotion that I was having, and that's what it was. Like, I didn't have the expectation of, oh, well, this is going to be this way. It was kind of just, I was just going with everything.
Mm-hmm.
What about you?
I was scared. Mm-hmm. Like I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know how to achieve what we have now. Mm-hmm. Like I knew I knew. I don't even want to say I knew what I wanted. Because I would say the only thing I knew I wanted was to be as far away from sin and intoxication from sin as possible. Mm-hmm. And the only direction I knew to go was like just run to the Bible, run to God, sob, and feel His presence. Mm-hmm. But as far as like what it is, I mean, I guess that's almost exactly what it is. Yeah. Because I mean, I think in the initial stages, especially like with the nature of like how we became or came to our walk, there was a lot more emotions involved immediately. Now, like I'm overcome by emotions, but in a different way, like in a happy way. Like I was more so overcome by emotions in the beginning because I was like, I don't know how you can accept me. Mm-hmm. I remember we talked about this recently too. Well, I think it was we talked about it earlier. There was like a lot of times when I would pray that God, I understand I'm not good enough. I don't deserve you. I don't deserve like my family. I don't deserve this relationship with you, God. But please just put me in a position to where I can drop them off at the door. Like on my way to the enemy, right? Like just let me drop them off at the door. Allow me to at least live the rest of this part of my life before I depart from my wife and my kids the best way possible so that way I can influence them in the best way possible to meet you. And that was like the passion. And that passion, it was understandable, but it was the wrong direction because like that goes against basically being saved by God's grace through our faith alone. Yeah.
But it was all new for you, so you didn't really understand it. But I mean, now you do.
Of course.
I think it was just a different, it was a different transition for me. And I say that because I've always been with God. Mm-hmm. I strayed away.
Oh, yeah.
Slowly, and I didn't even realize it. So when that moment happened, it hit me. And I'm like, okay. So for me, initially going into it was a different experience. Like we did it together, but it was mentally for me, it was a different experience than it was for you.
Yeah. I think so too. Even like we talked about, we were living together but separate at the same time. Mm-hmm. We were walking together and separate at the same time. Mm-hmm. Because and I think a lot of people, especially married couples, they don't understand that like in order to like grow together, you have to grow separate as well. Mm-hmm. Like because we can be in agreement with a lot of stuff, but like there's a lot of things that I've had to work on in order to be a better husband for you, and there's a lot of things that you had to work on to be a better, more aware wife to me. And then additionally, like there's a lot of things I had to work on to become a more patient and understanding dad. And there's a lot of things that you had to experience and understand how to become a better, more efficient mom, mm-hmm. right? And you can go deeper into that too, like how those two roads interconnect. Yeah. You have to know that your relationship with your spouse comes before your children.
Mm-hmm.
And I know a lot of people are probably going to be like, I'm turning this off because they, and I don't want to be that person, but typically it's the mom's like, nobody's coming before my kid, not even my husband.
Yeah.
And that's a dangerous spot to be in.
It is.
Because there's a, you know what, I'm not even going to go down that route. That's going to be a whole nother episode because like that can go a whole different route. But to get back on track, a lot of people, they don't understand that in order to grow together, you have to grow separately at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
You literally have to be working on yourself while you're working, and it's hard to handle sometimes. Um, so I guess to viewers that are in those positions that we've kind of described, where they're like new to their walk and um, they don't know where they're going, or like something, a significant emotional event has just happened to where they've experienced God for the first time and they're like, what the heck is going on? They're probably like, from start to where you are now, like, where did you get all this confidence? Like, where does your confidence come from? Like, how are you so sure of yourself now that you can be on a podcast, you can be talking about this?
Because God changed my life.
I know. Yeah, that's awesome.
Like, that's the simple answer to it all. Like, I witnessed it and He changed me.
Yeah.
So how can I not like people? And that comes with time too, like the boldness, because people sometimes have fear from rejection of other people and what people might say about you and things like that. But over time, like once you build your relationship with God, it's like this is the person that saved me, not once but twice. You know, like
Yeah, I can't even count how many times for me.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's where the confidence came from, for me, is like uh, the transition, right? Of let me drop them off at the door versus like, no, you're coming with.
Mm-hmm.
That transition of understanding like God calls us to do the will of the Father, right? In order for us to be saved, we have to do the will of the Father. And a lot of people are so confused on like, they think that they got to give this X amount of dollars, they have to do this or that or this. It literally says in the Bible, we are saved by God's grace through our faith alone. And then there's this little thing that we call punctuation. It's a period right at the end of that, which means that that sentence ceases and there's nothing else added to that statement. There's nothing else that is added other than faith, right? And so many people are so concerned with, while tithes are important, giving just their tithes and putting on their Sunday clothes.
Mm-hmm.
But what they're not understanding is that there is a very simple and misunderstood step, which is having faith that Jesus Christ died on the cross to save our sins, or save us from ourselves, right? Save us from our sins, to atone for our sins, right? Because, and I kind of equate it like this to people, when I'm trying to explain it, is like Jesus is the buffer between us and the wrath of God. Because before Jesus was in between us and the wrath of God, the wages of sin was death.
Mm-hmm.
And now Jesus is basically, he's like right there, and he's like, and this is where justification comes into play, right? This is a whole nother conversation too, but Jesus is like, look, God, like I promise they're good for it. Like I've got them, they're covered. You can trust me. Like that's where he's at, right? And he's that buffer between like us and the boss, right? Um, And so, like us having that faith that Jesus Christ died on the cross for us is where the justification starts, or where the justification is handed to us, right? Like where our sins are basically justified. Like they're like, okay, I understand that, even though like a sin like is not understandable.
Right.
God is the only one that can understand that, right?
Yeah.
So He's like, yeah, I understand that. I understand that you did X, Y, and Z. So you're justified, right there. And then another thing happens, and that's called sanctification, right? Our active role in sanctification is our repentance, right? And that's like a daily thing that has to happen.
Mm-hmm.
You are never fully sanctified until the day that you die, right? There's only one person that's been fully sanctified, and that's Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm.
but it is our job, our duty, our responsibility to work towards our sanctification daily, every day. And it is a very particular thought. You have to put particular thought into it. You have to actually put thought into doing it every day. You have to be persistent about it, and leave no room for the devil in those things. Sorry that I kind of went off on a tangent, but I just felt like it had to be said. Um, and then I guess like we kind of already talked about like what walking look. Well, we didn't necessarily talk about like what walking looks like with your partner. We kind of talked about like the pre-steps to that, um like growing separately and together at the same time. But in your eyes, like if you could describe what it's like walking with me.
Holding each other accountable, because we are going to have those, like you were just talking about. You have to pray every day, and there's going to be those challenges, but you have to look at your partner and be like, okay, well, like what's going on? What are you doing? And holding each other to that level of accountability.
Yeah, I think there's two sides to that, right? And I'm gonna try to do both of them. Um, Holding them accountable, but then the person that's being held accountable not getting your pride involved.
Yeah.
Because it's really easy, like when you tell me something and I know it's wrong, but my flesh flares up and it's like, dude, like, no, like I know what I'm doing, or like that's like a good response. Like, and that's not necessarily like the direction that we go, but it's very easy in those moments to let your flesh get involved, right? So you have to pay particular attention that when your partner is correcting you, that you need to trust that they're doing it out of love. Right?
Yes, but the partner that's correcting has to correct out of love as well.
Yeah.
Because like it has to go hand in hand.
Yes, because we've talked about this a lot, and mainly me, because I'm an emotional. Yep, you said it. I'm an emotional big man. It's not about what you say; it's about how you say it. Mm-hmm. Your tone is everything, and I've also talked about like you're my sanctuary, right? In our marriage, and when all the world is beating me down, I know that I can come to two people, and you're one of those two people. The other person I can come to is God. Mm-hmm. But it's just like inside of your arms is solitude. Mm-hmm. It's quiet. It's comfort. And I've told you, and we've talked about this a lot. Your voice is feminine for a reason, right? It calms me down. Mm-hmm. But depending on how you use it, if you're sharp with your voice, it makes me put my wall up, put my defense up. Yeah. But when you really want information out of me, or like you need me to act a certain way, and not in like you're trying to control me way, but when you need like things to kind of go a certain way, like you can control the narrative with like your soft spoken voice. When there's so much chaos going on in the house between like myself, our daughters, and just life in general, like your soft spoken voice, like is like it calms the storm, right? But on the flip side, like there's the dad voice too, that like it's kind of like a call to action too. So like they both have their specific uses, but just like talking about you, um, I, I think it's awesome that God gave women that ability to calm their men, and sometimes it's literally just a touch. Yeah. So for me, I think walking with a partner, walking with you, is it's about us, but it's so much more about me. And this is from my lens, right? I learned so much from you. Even though like I'm the head, right? Yeah. I learned so much from you. You, because of your subconscious ministry, right? Because we talked about that.
Yeah.
The way that you follow God, you've taught me patience. You have eliminated my impulsiveness. You have undone so much hurt in my life by just being who you are, both before our walk and, well, I would say during the hard times and then during our walk.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much stuff that you have undone single-handedly by your subconscious ministry that I don't even think that you're fully aware of. And just like the way that you love me by loving God, just like Ephesians 5, like you are Ephesians 5. You're an Ephesians 5 woman. And I love that, because my whole life I knew I didn't want the opposite of you. I didn't know what you were, but I know that, like, in my heart, I wanted a woman like you. And I'm just so, like, happy that God had mercy on my life and brought you in my life and taught me those things. Because as much as I thought that I was in control before, I had no control. And you were here to help me learn those things. And so, like, I'm, like, forever grateful for that. So, like, my walk with you looks like that. Looks like patience. Looks like understanding. Looks like looking at things from a different perspective. Because a lot of times I'm just like one dimensional. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the double-edged sword with being a husband and a father, is like that straightforwardness is really good for like child rearing and making decisions quick. But there's times, and just like God talks about in the Bible, there's a time for everything. And you have epitomized that verse. I can't remember exactly what the book and the verse is for that one, but you have epitomized what it looks like for there to be a time for everything. Mm-hmm. And you've taught me that. You've allowed me to slow down when it seemed like everything was like out of control. You showed me that there's control in letting go. That's you over there geeking. I think this is awesome. We haven't had like a super deep conversation like this in a long time. I really like it. I know we had like one similar recently, but I think this is like another important facet of having a biblical marriage, is being honest like this. Because with with life as busy as it is, especially with us being dual military, we don't have a lot of time to just truly tell you that I love you. Yeah. Like the way that I just did, not like the words "I love you," but like to truly like explain to you why and how, right? Because life is just like so crazy and sporadic, and obviously, like, the more that we try to do stuff for God, the busier the enemy's gonna try to keep us. Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah. I think, like, let's revisit just one thing, and I think it's the spiritual warfare part. Um, there was like um, that was like a huge transition in our walk, like, because a lot of people think that they're ready to follow God, but they don't actually realize like what that entails. Right. Like they don't see the fine details, like things that are bound to happen. Mm-hmm. And like there's like specific things that have to happen in order to circumvent those things. But they don't, people, like I said in the last episode, so many Americans think that, or make Christianity cute. Mm-hmm. But it's very much so not cute. Mm-hmm. Especially like, because we're about to dive into like the spiritual warfare part of like the initial parts of the walk, right? Mm-hmm. that was a huge transition between what I thought Christianity was, or not Christianity, what I thought following Jesus was, or following God, and what it really was. Like, this is a war.
Oh, yeah.
People don't understand that. Like, we war not with like flesh and blood, but with principalities and I forget what else it says. And help me if you remember, but it's, yeah, it says like we don't war against like flesh and blood, but like principalities and like I can't remember exactly, but there was that transition, and it was like things will never be the same because like from this point forward, much like the beginning of our walk, this point forward we will follow God. But now at this point, when we had that initial spiritual warfare, when things were almost tangible, like you could feel the room, you could feel, and I'll just paint a picture. Like you could feel people looking at us that weren't there.
Yeah.
You could feel the heaviness, and I think at one point you had mentioned that maybe you were hearing things. I don't know if you remember that.
It was so.
It's like you were getting out of the shower and someone said something to you in your ear.
Really?
I think you had mentioned that to me.
Okay. It's been so, like, I don't even really remember all the details, but one thing I do remember is, I don't know if I watched a video or something, but it was just like, if you have things in your home.
Oh, man. Go for it.
Because we didn't even notice.
Oh, my God.
And it was in our home about to go for so long, and we didn't even think that had anything to do with, monitoring spirits and stuff. And I remember, I was like, what do we have? And then.
Oh, bro. Go ahead and say it. Rocking chair, the catacombs.
Chair. We got the rocking chair from downstairs.
That was scary.
Very.
Yeah.
And it was for a child. Like,
oh, bro.
I remember as soon as we were talking about it, like you threw it down. We lived on the fourth floor. Right?
Yeah.
You just threw it down the stairs.
No, I threw that out the window.
Oh, yeah, the window, yeah.
And it crumbled to a bunch of pieces, and it wasn't enough pieces, so I went down there and broke it more. Yeah. And I didn't even throw it in like, well, I went and threw it in the dumpster. But yeah, so we had that.
It's like I don't even want anybody else to have it, which is crazy because like growing up, I always heard about rocking chairs. But either way,
we ain't going off.
The catacombs. We went there.
Had a souvenir
7 months prior to all of this stuff happening, and there was a magnet souvenir on the refrigerator with like the pictures of all the bones and and it was like
those are real people.
Yeah, it was open, and we just had it on the fridge. Immediately tossed out, like.
But that one in particular, I felt so led that like I couldn't just throw it in the trash. I took it across post. No, I ripped it up and I took it across post, and I threw it in a dumpster that was nowhere near our house. But before like we go like way deep into this, we also should like dive into like why did we do that? I mean, you kind of remember. It
was just like I just felt like I said. I think I watched a video about someone speaking about like if you have things in your home, like you should like get rid of those things because it's still like an attachment or something.
Yeah. So, the direction like that you're going with that is like everything is an open door to something. Yes. Good, bad, or indifferent.
Yes.
So this goes as simple as like the things that you consume, whether it's visually, spiritually, audibly, right? So what did I just say? Visually is like TV shows, movies, websites.
I'm glad you're taking it there.
Yeah, and then audibly the music that we listen to, and then food. Like, there's a reason why you're supposed to pray over your food, but then, that's a whole different discussion. And then also like spiritually, like the things that you consume, and then visually again, other than the like movies and TV shows, is like pictures, right? So basically, everything is an open door or portal to something, And people don't understand that. Like, they think this is part of, like, people thinking that Christianity is cute. Yeah, it's just
this. Everybody
yeah,
does it.
yeah. And I kind of wish we would have talked about this in the first episode, but this is all God's timing. But everything is an open portal, so we immediately, like, and it even went down to, like, things that we had on our phones. Like, we went through and just got rid of it all. Because that spiritual warfare, there was so many open doors in our life from there was a lot of open doors in our lives.
Yeah.
Through cell phones, through the things that we watched. I remember in particular, we were watching Shameless. And
I remember that.
Yes, and that's when it started. That's when we, like, really were like, no, this is it. That's when we stopped getting deep into secular stuff. Because I remember we were watching a scene and it was getting, like, really it was more than sexually suggestive. It was basically a porno from that TV show. And I used to love, like, Shameless. I thought it was like I could relate with it so much.
Yeah.
But we were sitting there, and in my spirit, like, these two people were about to go at it, and then I had just remembered that, like, or it was just put on my heart that this is porn. And I'm not watching pornography, but this is literally the same thing. This is like, yes, I mean, it's not even borderline, because, like the things that they were doing in that scene, they opened a door into your mind that allowed you to think about, like, dang, what are they really going to do? What's next? And then, like, your mind wanders, and then maybe you think about the characters, or the actors or actresses in that movie. And so, like, at that point, like, we paused the movie before, like, we paused the TV show before it even, like, really got, like, heavy. But, like, because we knew where it was going. And from that point forward, I was like, I can't watch that. Like, I don't want to watch this anymore.
Yeah, so with that, and then even with the music, I remember it all just came, like, drastically for you. It took time for me, and not because I thought, like, you were overreacting or anything. It's just I feel like we're on two different. I'm not saying that stuff is right, but we were just separate on that. So it took me a little bit of time to kind of jump on the bandwagon, because I was like, well, this isn't something that I'm struggling, with. So I'm okay.
Yes. And that's something that, like, we kind of learned together. Because, like, I can't remember so I'm just, like, kind of bad sometimes with, like, quoting word for word, but I know, like, what the gist of it is. But when God basically says that if you're doing something that causes your brother to sin, like, you don't do it. And that's kind of, like, where that was going, is, like, you were okay with it. You could listen to the secular artists, like your R&B stuff, and it wouldn't affect you. But for me, it was a matter of whether or not I wanted to choose you or I wanted to choose the world. And I knew because, I used to make music, secular music, right? And I used to love the J. Cole's, the Russ, the Biggie, the Tupac, like, all this stuff. Like, and once I got on this side, I realized that it was more than just words.
Oh, yeah.
Because the thing is, I would be in the gym and I'd be listening to J. Cole, and there's, like, one song in particular where it's, like, a very, like, sexual song. And I was just sitting there, I was, like, thinking, I was like, these songs make me think about the stuff that they're talking about. And that in and of itself is me not choosing you. Because it puts me right back in that frame of mind that I wanted to escape so badly. So my flesh wanted it. And since I made music too, it was a very, like, hard spot to be in, because I'm like, but I want to make music. And these people inspired me to do the things that I do, whether my music wasn't dirty. But I had to cut it off. Right? It says, like, in the Bible, if your arm causes you to sin, cut it off. Or if I can't remember the exact body part it's talking about, but it's basically saying, like, if something that you're doing is causing you to sin, you need to just cut it off. There's no, like, kind of, like, push it away. It's cut it off.
Yeah.
And that goes down to the point of like not leaving any room for the devil.
Mm-hmm.
Like I knew that it felt good in my flesh to listen to those things, but my soul knew better, right? Because I my flesh would remind me how good it felt. My soul knew better, and so I made that decision, where as much as it like was hard at first, I was like, I'm listening to worship music or I'm not listening to anything. I'm gonna have a silent drive, and eventually it became a habit, and now like we're discovering new artists. I'm even like making little things here and there, and we're being exposed to a whole new world of like um, of music that allows us to still feel good without feeding our flesh.
Feel good, worship God at the same time.
Yes.
And it brings so much peace and joy, like literally driving to work.
Yes.
Just listening, it brings like lightens up my day. And then now I have C in the back,
Yeah.
worshiping,
Great. And that?
literally asking for the same song throughout the whole drive, and I love it, and I will continue to play it. Like it's great. Mm-hmm. It's great.
Yeah, I actually like. I don't know if you experience this, but like I'll literally wake up from like a dream, or like I'll wake up from my day, and the first thing that I'll be on my mind is a song, and I'll just start singing it.
That's another thing too, right? Because songs, they get stuck in your head, and whatever song you was listening to, whether it's about love, which is also a form of lust, right? And things like that, you're constantly repeating these things and then you're saying it, so you're speaking it over your life. But with us, right, we're listening to worship music and we're speaking these things over our lives every day as we're speaking.
Yeah, and I think that's like the duality of worship music.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's all about consumption. Mm-hmm. And I'd rather be drunk on the spirit than drunk on spirits. Mm-hmm. Right? I'd rather be like I don't care how lame people think I am. I feel so good on this side. And like now from the outside looking in, like we pray like that God allows us to see people the way that he sees them. Mm-hmm. And there's so many times in my life where I'll sit back, because you taught me this, to like sit back and observe. Because that's what you do, like especially like in a new workplace, sit back and observe and see like what's actually going on. Mm-hmm. And it's almost as if you can just see the devil puppeteering these people.
Yes.
And they don't even understand that they have no control of their lives. Right. Like I think there was two things that were really hard for me to kick. One is, I know you're gonna laugh, is cussing. Mm-hmm. And every now and again I still struggle. I don't even struggle. Like there's like little spurts where it's like, oh dang, that was an accident. Mm-hmm. But the other one was like self-satisfaction, self-satisfying, right? That was really hard for me to kick. And when I initially approached a walk, I was like, I don't know how I would ever stop doing that. And now that's not something I ever even think about.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't. That's not something that the devil can get me on. I don't. At this point, like I'm not gonna go down the road, but I just remember thinking like I don't know how I could ever not do that. Mm-hmm. But like now, through the things that we've been freed from, that was one of the big things for me. Was like the sexual immorality stuff. It was like a whole weight lifted off my shoulders. And I'm gonna dive into that, but I want to wrap up like the consumption part of this, like where we're talking about getting rid of things, open doors, portals. But bring me back if I don't bring it up, mm-hmm. About the talk that we had on the couch. Okay. Because you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
With my eyes?
Yes.
Okay.
It wasn't on the couch. That was in the hotel.
Was it?
Yes. Yeah. Because I was thinking about the third one.
I thought that was like
That was immediately.
no,
Or maybe it was twice.
I think there was like there was 2 times when you talked about my eyes. But like I said, I'm not gonna get off on a tangent on that right now. I want to wrap up this consumption thing. So essentially, like what we're saying is like we had to rid ourselves of anything that wasn't God.
Right.
And so and this is gonna be actually a really good transition into what I was about to talk about. So the spiritual warfare at this time was just it was so real. It was like almost tangible. Like we could feel it, right? I was having really, really crazy dreams.
Yeah.
And we were in our bed and we would just kind of like pull the covers up a little bit tighter because like we were really scared. It was like we were scared to go to bed sometimes. I mean, I don't know if you were, but there was like times where but no, there was like times where I was like, I really hope I just fall asleep.
Yeah.
And it just like happens out of nowhere. Like I was hoping because like it was just like or I would like close the door all the way because like
I remember, yeah.
Because I felt like something was just looking at me, right?
Yeah.
And in the Bible, like it says is the devil roams the earth like a roaring lion seeking to devour his prey. And I bring this up to a lot of people when I have conversations with them, but a lion's roar is probably really scary if it's in your face.
Mm-hmm.
Like, especially when there's no cage in between you and him. But he says that he roams the earth like a roaring lion, not a biting lion, not a dominating lion, not anything other than a roaring. So literally, he's all talk. Mm-hmm. And his talk is very persuasive. Mm-hmm. It can put you into a position where you forget who you are in Christ, and it can dominate your life and put you on a one-way track, a fast track to backsliding. Mm-hmm. If you don't understand who your creator is and you don't understand that you have more control than that, right? Because like you said, he roams the earth like a roaring lion, seeking to devour his prey. He's looking for something to devour. Mm-hmm. But if you understand your identity in Christ, you're not on the menu. Because your name is in God's book of life, right? Your soul is already called for, it's claimed. So the devil can sit here and yell and scream and roar all he wants in your face, but all he's trying to do is scare you into submission. So that initial spiritual warfare that we experienced, where we had those dreams, mm-hmm. and then we felt like people were talking in our ear. We felt like we were being watched. We felt like there was somebody in the room. That was all his attempts to scare us into submission. And it was like he was whispering in your ear, like, hey, man, before you started all this God stuff, none of this weird stuff was happening to you. So, you know what? Probably if you just turn around and go back the way you were going, this will probably all go away. That was the sweet whisper in the ear of like, hey, I can make this go away if you want me to. But it took, and it was Marcus that
yes, I was gonna bring that up.
He's the one that taught me how to cast things out because I didn't know that we had that power because I didn't know the Bible yet, like how Jesus had through the authority of God had given his disciples the ability to go out and heal the sick and cast out demons and all that other stuff. But it's like, hey, dude, there's power in the name. Like in the songs, like there's power in the name and blood of Jesus. Yeah. And that's power over everything.
Yeah, we got some oil.
Yeah.
And we blessed the house.
So did we do that in Germany too?
Yes, we did.
Okay. So we did that, but I want to talk about the first time that I cast things out. Because it was scary. Because I remember like we would be in the living rooms, C would be in the crib.
Oh yeah.
And we would be watching the monitor and like our hearts, like you could almost hear our hearts beating in our chest because like we were like watching the monitor, like hoping that nothing was messing with her. Mm-hmm. And there was like times where it looked like she was getting pulled across the crib. And I would just run in there, flick on all the lights. I'd pick her up and I would start screaming like, I rebuke you. I cast you out in the name of Jesus Christ. Like I would just start going in and it was scary. because I had to be the man. And I had to fight that time. And I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if something was going to jump out and try to like possess me, or like, like, because movies. That's another reason why you got to get rid of all these. We don't watch scary movies, right? It's just another plot or ploy for the devil, right? It's another tool for him to use to get into your mind. Is the things that you consume. But I remember casting things out and screaming and holding our daughter and you at the same time, and just like casting these things out and just rebuking them, and almost as if like the devil was laughing at me, because like the spiritual warfare didn't stop there. But that was the start. Then the dreams got like a little bit more scarier. Things got a little bit worse when I started doing that. When I started poking the bear, or the lion, things got a little bit worse. And it would have been an understandable U-turn. Yeah. But we stayed the path, because in that moment, I feared for my life, but I feared God more. Because of what had happened to put us in that position anyway. I feared God more. So I knew that it was scary, but it was necessary more than it was scary for that to happen. And I remember too, like the devil would mock me in my dreams. And I never really said it like this before, but as we're talking about it, like it makes so much sense. Because I was taught by Marcus, right, that we could cast things out. And I would have this one dream, where this like, I'm just gonna describe it. But like this lady would follow me, and every time I would turn around to like cast her out, because I knew she was bad. The only time I could see her is when I walked past mirrors. And we're not about to go down that road either, because like that's a whole nother conversation. But every time I would try to turn around to cast her out like I was taught, she would grab my throat and I couldn't speak. So like the devil was like, he was basically like saying, like, I have control over you. You have no voice. You have no power. He was trying to scare me into submission. But I would still, like, no matter how much that person would follow me in my dream, I would still turn around and flare up my vocal cords and my lungs to scream at this person that I rebuke you, and all that sort of stuff, even though I couldn't in that time. But now comes like the crazy part, because there was a switch that happened, and I don't know if you remember me talking about this, but there was a time where I was woken up in the middle of the night. Remember? And I heard this scream. Oh yeah, I remember that. Oh my gosh. This like this part was so crazy, because it was like the devil was trying so hard, and he had done basically all of his tricks, and at this point he knew he had lost. Yeah, that makes me like tear. Yeah. It's been so long since like we talked about this, and some of the stuff I like don't really remember, but now like it's no, I remember this because it happened to me. Yeah. And it's like, and what I'm about to say after that is going to probably, like, if you didn't remember, it's going to make you probably cry. But it's like crazy. Yeah. Like, so I'm going to set the scene. This was another night. Are you okay? Yeah, I'm okay. This was another night where we were back at it again with the devil, and I was casting things out. And I was asleep, and I heard this clap in my ear. Yeah. And all of a sudden, like, I heard, and it was like 2 a.m, and we all know what time it is at 2 a.m, 2 or 3 a.m. Yeah. And I heard this clap. I woke up and I heard a scream, and it was like, ah, like it was loud, and it was like, yes, as if it was like pulled from me. It was like right next to my face, and then it went away, and I couldn't hear it anymore. It just like got quiet, like as if like a car that's going down the road, and you stop hearing its engine. And what was crazy, I don't know if it was that same night, if we got up and we prayed and did that, or if it was the next night that we were on the couch having our prayer time again. I told you about it, because I think that's what happened, is I told you about it then. But in order for me to explain what I'm about to say, I have to preface it with something else that happened before we were on our walk. Okay. Remember, so I was in Albania. Yeah. That's when that's when all of my crazy ideologies. So like this is pre-walk.
Mm-hmm.
That's when like all the things that really like tore us up started, right? And I remember I was in my tent and I was on my phone. I was scrolling, and this video came up about succubus.
Mm-hmm.
You remember what those were? So it's like it's a sexual demon, right? And I never knew that that was a thing, because you don't really realize like how many different types of demons there are out there until you realize like how many tactics that the enemy tries,
Yeah.
right, to infect our lives. But um, for instance, not even for instance. So what had happened is I learned about like this thing. It's called succubus, and it like in the video it kind of showed like what it looked like. It was like this little like fat little demon, like scary face thing.
Yeah.
And then later in that day, I went on this like tour, a self guided tour with like one of my senior NCOs and another soldier or two, and on this tour there was like that church, right? There was like a little it was like
you end up like deleting those pictures on your phone too.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah.
I don't think I did. But anyway, I went through this church, and the church was like, it wasn't like there was a service going on or anything like that. It just was empty pews, and it was like, it was weird. It was almost too quiet on the inside of it. It was very small. It was maybe, I would say maybe 30 people could fit in that little thing. But walking up to the church, there's a roof, and the roof extends, and like you can walk under it as if it was like it was covered patio almost. And I was just like admiring like the architecture, and it was like really cool. And I like looked up in the like underneath the roof, but at the ceiling, right? And I had seen this figure, and I was like, um, "Hey, sorry, I think is that a succubus? Like, did they carve that into this?" And he's like, "Oh no, no, no." But like after I had watched the video, I was like, "That's definitely like um a succubus designed into like the woodwork." And it's like almost like if you could think of like a gargoyle. You remember what those are? So like a gargoyle is like those things that sit on the building. They got like the nails. You know what I'm saying? So it's almost like that from like what it was depicted to me. So either way, I'd walked in this church, and I had even like walked through like the back of the church too, like on the inside of the building. And I came back from Albania, and I remember you telling me. Do you remember what you told me? No. So you had said your eyes, they look different.
Really?
Yes.
I said that then.
Yes.
I just remember the after. I don't remember saying it.
And this is why I know you're probably going to feel this heavy. Oh my gosh. So I asked you, I was like, what do you mean? You're like, I don't know. It's just something about you. Something about your eyes. They look different. Because I don't know how to get it to. Yeah. And this was like I said, this is when everything really popped. Yeah. Like when things went berserk. Yes. Right? Then we fast forward. We fast forward to our walk. All right. Remember we talked about the clap, the scream, pulled away. And then the next day we're sitting on the couch. And but before you get to that point. Yeah. After But right before the walk, right before the spiritual warfare happened, I asked you that question. Well, I told you your eyes look different. You not remember in the hotel, and you asked me what did you mean. I don't remember asking it prior to like after the trip, but your eyes were like baby blue, glowed like during that time. That's the only time I remember asking you that. Yeah. And then on the couch too. But you had said that they looked like they were changed, like they were different when I came back from Albania. Mm. But anyway, so fast forward, I just got done casting things out, went to sleep. I had the clap in my ear, woke me up. I heard the scream, and then it was pulled away, thrown. And then the next day we were having our time, and I was laying down. My head was in your lap. My legs were up on the backrest of the couch, and you looked at me, and you said your eyes, they look better. And in that moment, I had put two and two together. You didn't understand what you did, but I put two and two together, and I was like, babe. And I told you about the voice and the scream and all that stuff. I said, I think a succubus was pulled from me. Mm. And that succubus, remember, it's a sexual demon, and I had struggled with that for so long. Since I was a little kid, like everything was sexualized, right? And from that point forward, I felt like God had taken 1,000 pounds off of my shoulders. Like I didn't understand it that day, but I knew that something had changed. There was a switch that was flipped. And I remember immediately that, like, thinking back on it, I couldn't have enough intimacy with you physically before. And from that point, I was okay. Like, it would get to the point where, like, it was almost a week, and it was mainly because, like, um, I wasn't concerned with it, like as much as I used to be. Yeah. Like God had taken that lustful desire, right? And he changed that time that I used to the times that I would spend trying to find physical intimacy with you only, and he changed it into a different type of intimacy. Um, which, like, obviously, like, now things are different, but the intimacy is different. Both physical and emotional. But in that time, God had showed me, like, I've removed this from you. I've taken this sexual demon away from you. And from that point forward, like I couldn't remember a time before our walk that I looked at a woman without, like, seeing her probably with less clothes on, or like just the way that my mind would think. And now it's like the only thing I see is you. Like I don't enjoy other people. I don't like not like that. But like I don't look at people like that, and I don't desire to. Like the before I walk, I was like I couldn't get enough. Like I couldn't stop looking at different things. But like now it's like all I see is you, and all I want is you. All I desire is you. I'm crazy about you. You know. But yeah, that was a crazy time. Yeah. That spiritual warfare was really crazy, and I feel like a lot of people aren't ready for that, and maybe that's why they're so scared to commit. Yeah, I think so too. But the after, it didn't last. It lasted, but it didn't last. Yeah. Like for too long. Yeah. After that scream, that was it. Yeah, and then too, like the enemy had to get more yeah, he had to get way more creative because like those little things didn't bother. Yeah. And like honestly, the more that we seeked or we sought purity, the harder he has to try to get us. Because like we definitely like now, even though we have our spurts, we understand that like it's an attack. Um, because like really, like what does he have to attack us about? And this isn't in any way like taunting or anything like this. This is just really like because we seek, we truly, I think, seek God in everything that we do. Yeah. And that's like super important when we're talking about like your first steps, what they should be. It's literally just like seek God in all things that you do, and these things will be given to you. I don't think that verse has ever made more sense than right now. Yeah. Wow, what a crazy like. I didn't think like when we first started talking about this episode, and just like I think I put it's like maybe 6 bullet points. We talked about those bullet points, and I didn't see the conversation going like this. But I told you. Even though we talked earlier. I told you were gonna cry. Yeah, you did, and I was like, I don't think so. But I didn't. But I knew, like, when God had given me this download to talk about episode 2 of You Are Not the Same, I was almost in tears when I was sitting here, like tears of joy though, because like I could see clearly, like I could see the vision so clearly. It was like God had stuck his arm into my arm, and started writing these things. Because like last night we were going to record a different episode. We tried to, and it did not
feel right
at all.
Didn't start right. Even like trying to study together or come up with something, I just kept telling you like I can't. Like this is not flexing or anything. This is this.
Yeah. I think if I'm gonna say one thing, and then you can give your piece and maybe your advice when it comes to this episode. The biggest takeaway I could see, or like if you didn't hear anything else that we said, take this into consideration and hold it to your heart, is your initial walk is all about hearing and obedience. The rest of the stuff that we're talking about, like how we made it through things, that will come.
Yeah.
Because the more that you listen to God, the more that you'll hear him.
Hearing, reading.
Yes. But a lot of people, okay, and I'm gonna give this example, and I'm gonna switch it over to you. I'm gonna give you the floor. But I gave this example because I think it's a great example. Before, and I say this to my friends, and I'll just say it to you, before you met me, if we were both in Walmart, an aisle away from each other, and you heard my loud voice, I'm a loud person, but you heard my loud voice, you would think nothing of it. You wouldn't know who that is. You wouldn't be able to put a face to the name. You wouldn't even be able to put a name to the face. You wouldn't know whose voice that was, right? And the same thing goes with God, right? After you met me, my voice is very distinguishable in a crowd, probably to you, let alone an aisle over. You could tell that I was over there, and you would be like, "That's definitely my husband." And other people, that's definitely Trevor, right? They'll be able to tell because they've spent time with me. They got to know me. I've worked with them closely. And the same thing goes with your relationship with God. No wonder you can't hear him because you don't spend time with him. So a lot of people get their internal voice mixed up with God's voice, and that's because you don't spend enough time with God. Of course you don't know him because you haven't sat down and had a relationship with him. So, like I said, if you take nothing else from this podcast or this episode, take this.
Yeah.
Hearing and obedience will start you the right direction, and then it's really just like God just gives you things after that. And then all you do from that point is hear, and then you obey. And it's literally just a repetition of hearing and obedience back and forth. And just like the obedience just becomes more complex because he gives you more and more and more and more. But for you, if there's something that you could leave them with, if they didn't listen to anything else, they should listen to this.
Take it away.
I'm sorry.
Already.
I'm sorry. I mean, we do think alike too in some aspects.
I think that's the most important because that's how you should, like you said, start the walk that way, and everything else like just cut and dry. Yeah.
Well, I definitely love this episode. I think this is a good stopping point. Do you have any other thoughts before we close out?
No, I don't.
All right. Well, we definitely thank you guys for joining us tonight. This one felt like a little bit longer of an episode.
Yeah.
But I think it was completely necessary. So we thank you for your support, and we look forward to giving you guys more episodes in the future.